Let's look at the agenda real quick. Sorry, just one moment, please. All right. First, we will have an update on COVID issues. Have a short discussion about input on the forest planning process for the Pisgah Nantahala National Forest. Have an update on land conservation programs. Discussion on the Community Reparations Commission and the selection process for folks who will serve on it. And Arpa Economic Development Appropriations. Any other items commissioners would want to discuss during our briefing meeting today? All right, any questions about any items on the agenda for our regular meeting? Okay, I would like to request that we add one item to the agenda for the regular meeting under presentations, and that would be to hear from Pastor Leonti Ostapovich, who is a member of the Ukrainian community in Buncombe County, and he is part of some community-based efforts to provide support to the refugees and others who are being affected by the conflict in Ukraine. And there's some efforts within the Ukrainian community to help provide support to those folks, and he'd like to share some information about that. No action from the commission, it's more of a sort of a community awareness presentation. All right, let's go ahead and get started. The first item is the COVID update. Stacy Saunders is here to help us with that.
Good afternoon, Board of Commissioners and community. Thank you as always for the opportunity to provide the COVID-19 update. As of yesterday, we have a confirmed 50,412 COVID-19 cases in Buncombe since March of last year. And as we approach the 2-year mark of the pandemic, we are watching the Omicron surge continue to fade and cases continue to decrease. So as you're looking here at our EpiCurve, it's becoming clearer that our peak was around mid-January. Since then, we've seen an 86% decrease in cases. And as of yesterday, we were at 155 new cases per 100,000 per week, compared to a little over 230 new cases in the week prior. And compared to the peak that you see up there, that was over 1,150 new cases per 100,000 per week at that peak. The percent positivity continues to fall, and we are now below 10%. As of Monday, our percent positivity had fallen to 8.6%. And from the records that I keep every day, we haven't seen a value below 10% since the end of December of 2021. We've spent all of 2022 thus far in double digits until this week. Our regional hospitalization data continues to trend down as well. Our mission hospital data also is trending down. We saw a continued decrease in the inpatient beds occupied with COVID-19 and the utilization of ICU. As of yesterday, there were 59 COVID-19 inpatients throughout the mission system. This is a decline from almost 200 at the peak and just over 80 from last week. 5 deaths were reported last week, which results in a decrease in deaths from week prior. And I am hopeful that we'll continue to see these trends in hospitalizations and death continue to come down as we continue to go forward. Our local metrics that we've been following since October of 2020 are continuing to show improvement in all areas. There are some colors up there that you haven't seen in a while, particularly in positivity. This is a welcome sign as we begin to see those indicators slide into more favorable areas fairly quickly. And as I mentioned in the previous week, at this phase of the response, we continue to monitor the case rates, but also move to place more importance on if our community is experiencing severe illness, hospitalizations, and deaths, given the tools that are available, like vaccines, like treatment, to help reduce the impact of severe illness. I did just want to note that the CDC did release last week a new community level measure, which is a tool to understand the impact of COVID-19 illness on health and healthcare systems. This new community level also acknowledges the importance of case rates to inform us about transmission and disease burden, but places a great emphasis on the strain on hospital systems with the inclusion of new COVID-19 admission per 100,000 per week and the percent inpatient beds occupied by COVID-19. This aligns with our own movement toward that greater importance on the strain of healthcare systems and the indicators that we follow. In this newly revised tool, CDC transitions away from that 5-level system, which previously it used substantial and high areas, and those had additional public health recommendations. In this new tool, in high community level status, the public health recommendation includes recommending masks in indoor public spaces, but indoor masking is not recommended community-wide in medium or low community levels. And according to the CDC, Buncombe County's COVID-19 community level is now at medium. In this level, while there is not a community-wide recommendation for masks, if you are at risk for severe illness or immunocompromised, you may still want to wear a mask in public indoor spaces, and you can do so. Even if you're not and you still want to wear a mask, you can still wear your mask. Also in this level, it is still important to remember that if you have symptoms or you've been exposed, it's important to consider getting tested from a community site or a provider testing site, or use an at-home test. So the bottom line here is, as cases are decreasing and we continue to improve in other areas, it is important for each person to assess their level of risk of getting sick and spreading it to others. Evaluating your level of risk will help in deciding what additional precautions you might want to take, like masking. So I did want to spend just a little bit of time talking about our current vaccine and the testing efforts happening in the community. We did see a slight increase in vaccine uptake in our 18 to 24-year-old population since the last update, but otherwise there's been very little change in the other age groups. 72% of our eligible population has received at least one dose, and about 70% have received their full series. We have 96,799 third or booster doses that have been administered thus far. And thanks to our communications departments, we have provided vehicle magnets for our county fleet to serve as a visual reminder as we travel across our community to give your health a boost with vaccines. And additionally, we'll be working regionally with other partners to have some regional messaging around the continued importance of vaccines in protecting ourselves and the community. As far as the vaccine administration efforts, we continue to provide vaccine opportunities despite that waning in demand. On February 21st, the 40 Cox Mass Vax Clinic did sunset and transition or integrate into the Health Department Immunization Clinic located in the same building at 40 Cox. COVID-19 vaccine is available by walk-in at this new immunization clinic on the first floor, Monday through Friday, 8 a.m. to 4:30 p.m. And we continue to plan for our equity-focused vaccine event with our partnership with Healthier Together, the YMCA, and Mexican Consulate. We will be providing COVID-19 vaccines on March 8th, 9th, and 10th in conjunction with those events. And lastly, just a reminder that there are numerous vaccine providers within our community, many of them right inside your grocery store or in your neighborhood pharmacy. If you want to find a vaccine provider near you, please visit the North Carolina Department of Health and Human Services website, and you can enter in your zip code or city. In terms of community testing, the North Carolina Department of Health and Human Services testing surge partner Optum operated at UNCA from January 21st until February 20th, providing testing services Friday, Saturday, and Sunday. We are grateful to our partners at MAHEC and particularly Marty Stamey for coordinating that resource while deployed in our region. Additionally, the North Carolina Department of Health and Human Services community testing partner StarMed has begun operations at the Asheville Mall site. They are providing testing at this site Monday through Friday and every third Saturday from 10 to 2. They're also currently maintaining their Harrah's Convention Center site Monday through Friday, 10 to 2 as well. And lastly, they've added an extra day at their AB Tech site. Now will be available Sunday and Monday from 12 to 4. So to find those locations and times for available testing, individuals should visit the starmed.care/testing website for more information. And as with vaccine, there are many testing providers still in our community, and to find a provider that is not listed here, folks can visit the covid19.ncdhhs.gov/testing website, or just simply Google North Carolina Department of Health and Human Services, find my testing spot. And so in closing, we continue to see improvement in our community when it comes to the burden of COVID-19. COVID-19 cases are decreasing, but they are not gone. While cases are decreasing, virus is still circulating. So as we continue forward in this new phase of the response, I do want everyone to please remember, be aware if you have symptoms or you have an exposure to someone who has COVID-19. If exposed or have any symptoms that present, consider community or provider testing or at-home testing. If positive or you have symptoms, stay at home and wear a mask around others. If you are high risk for severe illness, please talk to your provider about treatment or visit this website around finding treatment. Remember to assess your risk of getting sick and spreading infection to others when deciding if and when to wear a mask or have other additional precautions. And consider getting the vaccine dose that you are missing today. So thank you so much, Commissioners, for your time, and thank you to the community who's listening in. On behalf of our entire public health response team, we appreciate the opportunity to share the information with you.
Thank you. Commissioners, are there any questions? All right, thank you very much.
Thanks so much.
All right, next on the agenda is some discussion around the forest planning process for the Pisgah and Nantahala National Forest. At our last meeting, we heard some officials from the United States Forest Service give some updates around the forest planning process. And so we also wanted to provide an opportunity for some of the citizens in our community who have been real involved in that process to also share their perspective. And as the commission will recall, we have the biggest area of, I think it's the largest area of national forest in the county is in the Big Ivy area. We also have part of the Pisgah Ranger District starting down in Bent Creek. So we've got that area in the other side of the county. But there's obviously been a lot of community interest over the last many years around the future management of the Big Ivy part of Pisgah National Forest. And the county has adopted, I think, 2 previous resolutions regarding our support for protection of Big Ivy. So we wanted to invite friends of Big Ivy to come to the briefing meeting today to share some of their perspective on the draft forest plan. And Will Harlan, thanks for being with us.
Hey, thank you so much. And thank you, all of you, for your support so far. The resolutions that you have passed previously have been instrumental, and you have been champions of this forest. So from the bottom of my heart and from our community and from the public, thank you immensely for what you've done so far. I'm hoping to share a few slides to show you what you have helped protect so far and ask you to take the next step. It's on.
This is not the right presentation.
Right on. Well, while that's come, oh, here we go. All right. So Big Ivy and Craggy are the same landscape, just to be clear. They're two names for the same portion of the Pisgah National Forest in the northeast corner of Buncombe County. You can see that kidney bean-shaped area of National Forest, and it, as Brownie mentioned, it is the largest portion of public lands in Buncombe County and the last old-growth forest in Buncombe County. There's over 4,000 acres of ancient forest in this neck of the woods, and spectacular vistas from Craggy Gardens. Craggy Gardens overlooks the Big Ivy section. We've got 70-foot waterfalls, old trees, massive old growth in this very special part of the forest. Also a major recreation hub, world-class recreation, mountain biking, hiking, climbing, and even blockbuster movies have been filmed in Big Ivy. The Hunger Games, Katniss kissed PETA right beneath this rock. This is Corner Rock, also a popular bouldering spot. So just incredible recreational opportunities, and then the biological diversity is stunning. Over 40 rare and endangered species in Big Ivy, including salamanders, Northern Carolina flying squirrels, just a spectacular diversity of wildlife in this region. And then, of course, the views, the panoramic vistas from Craggy Gardens, the most visited spot along the Blue Ridge Parkway, the most photographed, the most popular spot, 500,000 visitors a year. So an important economic engine and tourism hotspot for Buncombe County. And this is the view shed. We mapped the views. It's not just visible from the parkway, but from Interstate 26. You see Big Ivy as you come into Buncombe County. Those are the views that we're fighting to protect. And I'll get back to these maps in a second, but want to briefly tell you a story, a love story that predates me. I've lived in Big Ivy for 2 decades now, but this fight is way before my time. 30 years ago, folks in the Big Ivy community stood up and fought for their forests when logging was proposed in Sugar House Cove in Big Ivy, and they rallied and spoke up and stopped that logging project that the Forest Service was proposing. The Forest Service said, we will kick it to the next forest plan, and that's where we're at now. So when they first released a draft plan, this is the Big Ivy Community Center. Over 300 people packed the room. I think Brownie may have been in that crowded, sweaty room, and more folks couldn't come in because there were so many people. The fire marshal, the fire code prevented any further folks, but you can see the overwhelming public support for protecting this place. The sentiment in that room was unanimous: protect Big Ivy. And now the next generation is stepping up to protect this place. And we've got over 150 businesses from across Buncombe County and beyond. It's received incredible coverage in the media. You all have passed 2 unanimous bipartisan resolutions supporting protecting all of Big Ivy, and we can't thank you enough for that. Where things are at now is the Forest Service has released its final plan. After 8 years and those crowded meetings and all of the public input, over 10,000 folks have chimed in supporting Big Ivy. Unfortunately, this is the map that the Forest Service has released, and it includes 4,000 acres in their highest priority logging designation. So the North Fork section of Big Ivy and the Snowball Mountain section of Big Ivy are in the Forest Service's highest priority logging designation. And they've even identified the logging roads that they plan to use to log these areas. We're really concerned about that. We're asking you tonight to take the next step and encourage the Forest Service to protect all of Big Ivy, including the North Fork and Snowball sections, which are critically important to this region. The North Fork of Big Ivy protects the whole Big Ivy area, but especially North Fork, protects the headwaters of the Ivy River, which Weaverville relies on as its municipal drinking water source. There's also 1,500 acres of old growth in North Fork and Snowball. Snowball is home to one of the most popular trails along the Blue Ridge Parkway, the Snowball Trail and the Mountains to Sea Trail. Beautiful vistas from Hawkbill Rock, a really important cultural heritage site at the end of that section for the Big Ivy community where the Snowball Fire Tower used to sit, that's now in our community center. So the cultural and natural heritage of these sections are really important. What we're asking you all to do now is continue your legacy of being champions for this area and object to the forest plan. Encourage it to protect these 4,000 acres that are now in their highest priority logging destinations, and simply respond to what the public, the community, stakeholders, and you have asked them to do, which is protect all of Big Ivy. That's where we're at now. I'm happy to answer any questions about the forest plan, about the objection process, about the views from Big Ivy, both the vistas as well as the perspectives that folks would like to share. So happy to answer any questions, and thank you once again for being such remarkable champions for this forest.
All right, Will, thanks. Commissioners, any questions?
Will, I guess a quick question I had listening to you. Did one of your maps identify the areas that the Forest Service identifies as high priority logging and the roads that you mentioned?
Yes,
I do
unfortunately, the
remember the
maps
boards
that the
on that.
Forest Service have provided are really bare bones, but I will show you those right now. It's the lime green sections of this map, if you can pick those up there, at the northernmost section of Big Ivy and the southern westernmost section of Big Ivy. It also includes parts of Shope Creek and Ox Creek, which have become really popular destinations, and those are also in their high priority logging designations. So there's real concern from the community, even beyond Big Ivy. The Asheville community, Western North Carolina community, the recreation community, conservation community have all been very clear in their support for Big Ivy and all of its pieces. But those are especially important pieces of the puzzle that we want to see protected.
Thanks so much. This is really helpful. Can you just walk us through sort of the timeline and process moving forward in terms of how final decisions will be made and by whom?
Yes, thank you. So we're in a 60-day objection period, which started back on January 21st. So we have essentially until March 21st to file any objections to this plan. And there will be objections coming from many groups, conservation groups, recreation groups, even other counties. Not all will be supporting conservation, but we're hoping this county will, as they have done. And but we have until March 21st to file an objection. An objection will allow you to be at the table when the Forest Service resolves all of the objections. So you would be in the room, you would be a party to those discussions, and you could advocate on behalf of the county for what you've already requested, which is protecting all of Big Ivy. It's a simple objection. The objection could simply be protect these 4,000 acres like we've asked. And we can help you draft that objection and provide, legal arguments for it. But it's a very simple statement, and it essentially ensures that your voice is heard in the objection resolution process.
So, Will, so there's there's the forest plan and the decision about whether the commission would want to submit an objection or other kind of comment or resolution around that. The other, I think, idea I've heard from the community is that sort of beyond the forest plan, the hope is that some of the areas in Big Ivy and maybe other areas on the Forest Service can also receive, because forest plans change over time, right? It seems like they're always revising the forest plan, like it never stops for some reason. To permanently protect some of these areas on our national forest, the hope is to get them designated by Congress as either national scenic areas, and there's also some wilderness area designations that are and many of which are supported by the Forest Service, right? So the agency is aligned with the interest of some of the conservation advocates around that. But for Big Ivy, the hope of the community is that it will be protected through a new national scenic area designation by Congress. Is that correct?
That's right, and thank you for raising that. So as I mentioned, this started 30 years ago when we stopped, when Big Ivy rose up to stop a logging project, and they said, we want to protect Big Ivy, and now we're back here with another forest plan saying the same thing, asking for the same things, and again, the Forest Service is targeting Big Ivy for logging. So we're hoping to stop this cycle and not have to keep fighting the Forest Service every time they propose a new forest plan. And the best way to do that is to enshrine it in legislation. And so the Craggy National Scenic Area has been proposed, which would protect all of Big Ivy as a scenic area and have an embedded wilderness that's already supported by the Forest Service. That has wide political, public, community support as well. And that would be the next step. But we need to get the forest plan aligned with the National Scenic Area proposal. And right now, those 4,000 acres are what's missing.
So there's currently a wilderness study area right around the high elevation areas of the Craggies.
That's right.
And so it would take that from a wilderness study area, go ahead and designate that as wilderness, and then the balance of Big Ivy, the majority of the property wouldn't go into wilderness, but a national scenic area designation, which provides a lot of protection, but also some more flexibility in terms of how it's managed and utilized for recreation and things like that.
That's exactly right. So that would permanently protect all of Big Ivy, all of the views from Craggy Gardens, Blue Ridge Parkway, permanently protected, so we're not having to ask the Forest Service to keep coming back to protect these areas. This would be the way to permanently enshrine those protections.
And the Forest Service does support designation of a lot of Big Ivy as a national scenic area, which is good news, but it doesn't include, their recommendation does not include the full area that a lot of folks in the community would like to see designated.
That's right. So the Forest Service has come a long way. They initially proposed logging most of Big Ivy. Now they've proposed a forest scenic area for a good chunk of Big Ivy, and that's a big step. But the Big Ivy community stands together, the recreation conservation community, everyone stands together. We want to protect all of Big Ivy. That's a critical watershed, ancient forest. We can't neglect the two most important pieces. And so we're just simply asking the Forest Service to go a little further and protect all of Big Ivy, which is what everyone is saying. Even the timber industry has supported protecting all of Big Ivy. The Nantahala Pisgah Forest Partnership is a coalition of 30 organizations, diverse organizations, includes forest products industry, timber industry, hunting organizations, as well as recreation groups. They've all been hammering out an agreement for the past 6-7 years, and that compromised their very first recommendation, their top of the list, protect all of Big Ivy as a Craggy National Scenic Area. So there's no one that wants to log Big Ivy except for the Forest Service, and we're hoping they will respond to the county's input, the public input, and protect these last pieces of Big Ivy.
But at this time, you're just requesting that the commission weigh in on the forest plan, not to take some step regarding resolutions on scenic and wilderness area designations. Maybe that's for a future date, but for now, the forest plan is the focus of the.
Right, well, in 2020, you all passed a unanimous bipartisan resolution supporting the Craggy National Scenic Area, and we'd love for you to reinforce that with additional resolutions if necessary as we get closer to congressional approval. But right now, most urgently, we need Buncombe County Commission to object to this forest plan. Otherwise, the Forest Service will move forward. This is their final plan, and without objections, they will move forward as is. So that's why objections are critically important right now.
Will, have you seen across the country with other Forest Service final plans, there being some success with objections to where the Forest Service is really listening and will make some changes based on our objections and other organizations?
Yes, the 2012 planning rule has enabled this process to be improved, and we've seen substantial response from the Forest Service to objections, especially when they come from the most populous county in the Pisgah-Nantahala footprint. You all have a really important role to play, and your voice will be heard. The Forest Supervisor, James Malonis, was at that 2015 meeting, that crowded room, So he's heard loud and clear what the public wants, what the community wants. And I'm confident if he hears from Buncombe County, he'll do the right thing and make the necessary changes.
Thank you.
All right, well, if there's no other questions right now, so Will, and some of the other folks in Friends of Big Ivy and the whole coalition of organizations around this have obviously spoken to the commission about this a number of times. So I think their request is that we file an objection. It's basically filing like a comment in the forest planning process. After Will reached out to some of the commissioners after the last meeting, I advised that I think that the commission would definitely want to hear from the community on this, since we've already heard from the Forest Service reps on it. And he did share a draft that we could consider. So if this is something the commission is interested in, what we could do is we could have our staff look at the draft comments that were prepared by Friends of Big Ivy. And because it's not something that obviously we have, like, it's not something our staff work on day to day. So if someone could kind of take a first cut at it for us to look at, react to, I think that would probably be better than us developing it ourselves, since they've got a lot of the expertise on it and are familiar with the details. But then our legal team and anybody else that the county manager thinks would be appropriate to look at it, then that could be done, and something we could consider for our next meeting. If we are going to do it, we do need to do it at our next meeting, because otherwise we'll miss the comment period. So if there's no objections to that, then we'll ask Will to share a draft form that we can consider that would be consistent with the previous resolutions the commission has adopted around this part of the Pisgah National Forest. All right, sounds good. Well, Will, thanks for being here. Thanks for all the work you and so many folks in the community have been putting into this monitoring of our public lands, and we'll take next steps on it.
Thank you immensely. You all have been champions.
All right.
Much appreciated.
You too. Take care. All right. Next up is a program update around some of the other land conservation planning work that Buncombe County is involved in. And Commissioner Wells is going to get us started on this, and I think there's some staff here to help chime in as well.
Thank you. Yes, I think it was about a year ago that we discussed having additional funding with the program and everything, and we really appreciate the commission being supportive of that, all of you, and thought it would be good to provide some updates on that, just so you know how that's going. And fortunately, Ariel Zipe is here, as well as some more, and I think she'll introduce some of the other staff as well as we proceed and talk some about the great work that they've been doing. So I think their presentation, and there it is. Yeah, go ahead, please, Ariel, thanks. So as you all know, I think it was in 2020, those commissioners who were already on the board at that time set this as one of your strategic goals. And I also just wanted to remind us, beyond focusing on the environmental and energy stewardship, this goal also helps impact some of our other strategic goals as well. So it impacts our public health, the air and water quality, healthy food, of course, that we all appreciate. Also educational opportunities, such as the Camp Woodson project that is in progress, and economic vibrancy, such as our robust farm-to-table economy and tourism. And just so we have some overview of some Buncombe County facts as well. As you know, from the last census, this is kind of where we are with residents. Fortunately, we already have 18%, and it's fortuitous, we were talking about this today after Will was here as well, that we do, combining private and public lands, we have about 18% of Buncombe County that is protected. And so I think we're very fortunate. We have a wealth of natural resources here that, in my opinion, we would be wise to never take for granted, because I really do believe that it's not just impacting us now, but we're thinking of our future generations. And so that's really important for us to take in consideration. And when we look at this, then we get an idea of the potential with conservation. So basically 1% is a little over 4,000 acres to continue to conserve more of that land. And I think right now, we'll look here, with this mapping, you can get a sense, and you can clearly see up there some of what Will was talking about as well. So the areas in red are the public land, and you see the Blue Ridge Parkway there connecting those two large areas of the public land. And then with the green, you're able to see the private land. And if you'll notice, a lot of work is being done around the public lands as well, because fortunately, we have a lot of landowners in Buncombe County that very much care about conservation, and we were actually out in that Big Ivy area last week doing some site visits with some landowners who are considering putting their land in conservation. So we were up in that north corner there, pretty close to where Madison, Yancey, and Buncombe connect. And so I really think it's wonderful when we have so many folks, and actually those two landowners had just recently moved to Buncombe County. So this is one area where you've got folks that have lived here a long time that are really passionate about the conservation, as well as those who are moving to the area. And it's really important for being able to protect that clean drinking water, as Will was mentioning, also wildlife habitat and all of that in that area. And so when we think about our natural resources, I think also about, I've been watching as the people are giving us feedback on our comp plan, and it's really been interesting to look at some of those results. And last week when I was checking on that, it was, one of the questions is what some of the most important needs for protecting land and water. And they could give their top 3 responses, and 64% said protect the county's environment, air, water, soil. 61% said clean water, and 52% said protect working lands. And when they were asked the question about the biggest concerns for the future of Buncombe County, beyond cost of living, that clearly was the top indicator there. But the next one was 50% losing natural areas and agricultural land was the next biggest concern. And then when you ask them, what do you like most about Buncombe County, 80% said the natural environment. And that is, I think that's whether you've grown up here or whether you moved here, I think that is an area that we all agree that is really important to us, is our natural environment. And so I really feel it's incumbent upon us to be really good stewards of our natural resources, because there's so many things, whether you enjoy hiking, hunting, fishing, kayaking, and clearly we all enjoy eating, so doing this type of work is important and touches everyone's lives. And now I'd really appreciate it if Ariel would take over there and share some of the good work that they have been doing, some of the specific work that they've done since we first talked about this last year at this time.
Thank you. So I am Ariel Zeip. I'm the Farmland Preservation Manager for Buncombe Soil and Water. So over the last year, we have been working diligently to protect the county's land and natural resources. We've worked very closely with the Land Conservation Advisory Board as well as the Agricultural Advisory Board, and we have been able to close 7 conservation easement projects since last February 2021. So that's protecting around 468.5 acres permanently, and some of those acres are working farms, working forests, scenic view sheds, ridge tops, mountainsides, wildlife corridors, and projects like that. So another place where we've been pretty busy is initiating projects. So you tasked the county with increasing our conservation work last year. We said we could do about 15 projects a year, and we've already initiated 16 conservation easement projects between both of our conservation boards. So that's happened since February, and we have more to come between now and the end of the fiscal year. So that's totaling at about 1,055.6 acres. So recently we've had the opportunity to complete a GIS analysis to create priority regions of conservation for Buncombe County in order to really help direct this land conservation work with research-based GIS analysis. So this is a sneak peek at some of our currently identified priority regions for farmland preservation in Buncombe County. We have identified Newfound, Leicester, Sandy Mush area as kind of one region. Also, the Jupiter, Ivy, Barnardsville region as well, and the Fairview, King Creek region. So these are regions that have the highest conservation of agricultural lands and protected lands in the county. So it's really, you can really make a high impact by putting more conservation in these kind of regions with higher concentration of protected lands. So yeah, I think that it's fantastic to be able to do this and to have this analysis to really drive the conservation work that we are doing.
And with that mapping, I really appreciate that because that's been one of our goals all along, and I really think it's great. Avni's been able to come on board and work with Ariel and dig into that, because that way we're able to really prioritize those areas that we're looking at and be very strategic with it. And so just to give you a sense of some of the work that they're working on with this as they're proceeding, so I think you have about 15 easement projects queued up, which would be about close to another 1,000 acres for this coming year. And I wanted just to give you all a sense of kind of the scope of this beyond what they specifically have queued up right now, because I think that's really a testament to this program and the great work that they've been doing, is how many folks that we have on wait lists for this work, and how much it's also a testament to our community and the fact that people were really dedicated to conservation in our area. So specifically, like right now, they'd have 5 additional projects totaling close to 500 acres ready this year to go, in addition to what they already have budgeted. And then close to 50 additional projects, and that's on the farm advisory as well as the LCAB, which is the land conservation. So that's all of that together, basically about another 50 projects, 5,000 acres that's already on wait list. And the great news is that there's folks still coming on. There's always more folks that are interested, just like the ones that we went out and visited with there in the Big Ivy. The great thing is those neighbors keep spreading the word because they are dedicated. So they really kind of, they're our best advocates. Folks who have done conservation are our best advocates in some way, because they talk to their neighbors, and then more people are interested in doing it, and then they reach out to Ariel and Avni. And that's one thing that's really important too. I want folks to know who to reach out to if you're interested in doing this work. And Ariel, can you talk some more just about some of the other projects that you do to really support this work?
Absolutely. So over the last year, we've been able to make significant strides and progress in our land conservation program. Like Commissioner Wells mentioned, we've been able to hire Avni Naik, our new Farmland Preservation Coordinator, in order to help our program support and to also help with the GIS analysis, to coordinate our conservation efforts with both our Land Conservation Advisory Board and our Agricultural Advisory Board. And so, which have now also been brought into the Agricultural and Land Resources Department. So not only have we been able to support farmers and landowners by protecting our land, we've also been able to bring a statewide agritourism app to Buncombe County. The Visit NC Farms app was able to be launched in Buncombe County this summer, and we've also led a regional effort to bring it to our surrounding counties in Western North Carolina. So very excited about all of the work we've been able to do over the last year. Thank you all so much for your continued support of this important conservation work. It's creating lasting impact in our communities and will continue to do so in perpetuity. So please reach out to us if you have any questions, share our information to anybody who you think is interested in land conservation, and let me know if you have any questions.
Thank you, Ariel. And I also want to mention on our Climate and Environment Subcommittee, the staff has been coming to us and we're working on some specific goal setting. So I think something will be coming from our subcommittee with that as well. So just wanted you to know. And if you all have any questions for them, but I just want to thank you so much for the great work you all are doing, and also for reaching out regionally. I think that is really important. I love that you're working with other counties also in doing that important work for our region around food security. Thank you.
All right, thanks, Ariel. Thanks, Terry. All righty. And those draft goals are those goals are for between, kind of this set of work between now and 2030. Is that the time frame that it's being looked at? I know I've been in this meeting, but just refresh my memory.
For our subcommittee?
Yeah.
Yeah, they're exploring that. They're bringing in some different times to us and different
Okay.
goals, but yeah, around that.
All right.
So beyond our 2025 strategic plan.
Yes. Okay. Very good. All right, the next item on the agenda is the Community Reparations Commission selection process. And Rachel Edens, I believe, is here to help us out with this discussion. Thanks for being here.
Good afternoon,
Good
commissioners
afternoon.
and community. Thank you so much for allowing me to come and share some updates with where we are with the selection process for reparations. Share a little bit about where we are with the county, as well as what the city is doing, as well as the neighborhoods. So today, this afternoon, we're just going to cover a few points that I think are especially germane to where we are right now with the selection activities. So looking at where we have been so far and where we are to date, reviewing the selection impact focus areas that the commission members will be chosen from. We need to discuss the alternate membership options, review the selection tools and suggestions and materials that you all have been provided, and address any outstanding concerns about next steps in the commission process. So here you have a chart of where we are in the selection process by city council, the neighborhoods, and you all as the commission. So thus far, the city has conducted 18 applicant interviews. They did that on February 15th. These were live streamed on the city's YouTube channel and the public input page, and they also were recorded, so they are housed in both places for review. They are scheduled currently to appoint their 5 nominees to the commission on March 8th at their city council meeting. Originally, I will say that they were slated to select on February 22nd, but there has been a bit of a delay, so they will be choosing on March 8th. And they are currently in the process of reevaluating applicants. But the neighborhoods, which include, just to remind everyone, Asheville Public Housing, Burton Street, Easton Valley Street, Heart of Chestnut Hills, Shiloh Community, the Southside Community, and Stumptown. From there, each of those 7 communities has chosen their 15 community representative commission members with up to 2 alternates per neighborhood. The city council will be officially appointing these individuals to the commission at the March 8th council meeting, but I also want to be clear that these 15 members were chosen specifically by the neighborhoods. There will not be an interview process or a separate interview process by the city council. For you all and our next steps here in the county, we will be interviewing and selecting applicants and appointing 5 commission members at the March 15th Board of Commissioners meeting. And the pool would consist of the 6 county resident applicants, as well as the remaining applicants from the total of 18 city resident applicants. So basically the 13 that remain after they've chosen their 5, there will be those as well as the 6. So these, just to remind everyone and bring everyone back to kind of the focus of what the individuals and the applicants have said about their expertise and their experience, they're based around these 5 impact focus areas. So they have come together, and you will see that on their applications. The 5 impact focus areas are housing, economic development, public health, education, and public safety and justice. I do want you all to note that on the applications, you will see that some applicants have listed their areas of expertise in more than one of the impact focus areas. We would request that you please ask them to select their main focus area. The others are very helpful to the selection process, and they will also be helpful in the selection of alternates to the commission, because for alternates, we're really looking for generalists who have some experience across the board. But for your main impact focus areas, we would want them to please identify what they are most interested in or where they feel like they have the most expertise. So to speak a little bit more about the appointment of alternates, I want to make sure that I share kind of what that process is and what that looks like. So the appointment of alternates is really a best practice just to ensure continuity throughout the process in case someone that is a primary applicant has to drop from the commission for some reason, because this will be a very long-term project and one that is highly important and will be detailed. We want to make sure that there are applicants in place. So just as a reminder for the Vance Monument Commission, there were, in addition to the 6 members, there were also two alternates chosen by both the county and the city, so for 4, and several of those were utilized. So I just want to kind of bring everybody back to that thought. So that's one of the reasons that choosing applicants will be or alternate applicants will be important. These members will be non-voting. However, that is the primary difference. These commission members are expected to fully engage in the process, to attend all meetings, and to also be compensated in the same way as the primary commission members. So we want to make sure that there is the ability to move in seamlessly and that these individuals are compensated appropriately for their time. Regarding compensation, I just want to share that the compensation structure that has been chosen by the city is $15 per hour for both primary members and alternates. Those funds are coming from the project management budget directly. So that is a cost that will be covered by the city. So given that, our suggestion is that the board consider appointing a minimum of 2 alternates that have that general experience across all of the impact focus areas. So regarding selection tools and materials that you have at your disposal presently, the candidate materials are provided for you in your packets, and they're available for review ahead of applicant interviews and appointments. Again, just to reiterate, the appointment should be made based on their expertise and experience in the 5 impact focus areas. A rubric and question bank have been provided by the Reparations Commission project management team, and while they're not mandatory for your use, they may be helpful tools for you in the interviewing process. Again, going back to that first slide that we talked about with where we all are in the process, interviews of all city residents were live streamed and recorded, and they are housed. So these interviews can be viewed on the City of Asheville YouTube page or accessed via public input. And so at your discretion, you may choose to utilize these recorded interviews rather than holding separate interviews for the county appointments, but that is at your discretion, but it is something that's available to you. And before we get into our discussion, I do want to add a little bit of information about one other additional form that's in your packet this afternoon. That is a Reparations Committee commitment statement that is provided by the city, was drafted by the city. We were provided that document to review last week from the city's council. And so I want to make clear why that is being used, what function that serves, and where that is kind of in the ecosystem of all boards and commissions. So first of all, I just want to share that we in the county do not have such a document for any of our boards and commissions, nor does the city have such a document for any of their other boards and commissions other than this specific one. And so when asked why exactly they were choosing to have this form, this document, this language included specifically for this, the information that was relayed back to me is that because of the nature of this particular commission, public input, scrutiny, the sensitivity of the issue, they want to make sure that there are no conflicts of interest, no political aspirations, nothing that would take away from their full involvement with the commission. So I just want to make sure that you all have reference to that one document that has been added. That is new. We just got that within the last week. So I wanted to share that with you all. And with that, I'm glad to help answer any questions or speak to anything, or if there's anything I don't have the answer to at present, I'll be glad to source it for you.
And Rachel, did you say has that form been shared with us yet?
It should be in the packet. And if not, we will provide it to you and make sure that
It
you,
should be in the where?
in your packets.
I don't think it's on the website. I'm not seeing it if it is.
It
I
is,
haven't seen it either. No.
All right, let's just make sure it gets.
okay, we'll make sure that you have access
Yeah.
to that. I apologize. Any other questions or materials that I can help provide at this time?
What's the duration of the commission's appointments?
Do you mean how long will the
How long will the commission
commission go?
How long is their work scheduled to last?
I see. At present, I personally am not certain how long their commission is scheduled to last. I don't know the end date at present. At this point, as far as I know, the next steps after the seating, they will move into their next process, but we haven't been giving details on that portion of the work so far. We've really just been focusing on the seating and selection process. So at present, I don't have that, but I can find out if there is an anticipated end date from their project manager and provide that information to you as well.
Okay. I mean, if nothing else, I mean, I think with a lot of these kind of community advisory efforts, I mean, there's a question about, is it like, perpetual, or is it sort of requested to do kind of a scope of work and then make recommendations, and then its work is concluded? So is it
I believe
in
it
one
was a
category or
scope of
the
work.
other?
I think it was a scope of work.
It
if
is
I
a scope of
remember
work.
right.
It is a scope of work. So despite the fact that I don't have a projected end date, the commission is seated only for what will be a defined amount of time, because the end goal for the commission will be to make recommendations on what the reparations could look like in the community. So it will not be an ongoing, it will be for
It's not a
defined.
perpetual period.
Right, exactly. It is not
What that timeframe is has not maybe been decided at this
right.
point? Okay,
That's correct, to the
understood.
best of my knowledge.
All right.
And I
Other
just,
questions, commissioners?
yes, I just want to confirm, so we are going to select 5 as well as 1 or 2 alternates?
The suggestion is 2 alternates.
Okay,
But that is up to you.
okay,
The clear numbers for selection are 5 primary commission members that are chosen by the county, 5 by the city, and then 15 by the neighborhoods, for a total of 25 total on the commission, plus alternates. The alternate number has not been defined by the city either. One of the points that was shared with me this week, and I don't think that there is clear decision around this, but one of the pieces is that the city has or is considering waiting to select their alternates until we have selected not only our 5, but any alternates that we would like to choose as well. So if one were to go with 7, we would be able to choose our 5 plus the 2, or 2 alternates for 7 total. We would be able to make those choices on the next meeting at March 15th, and then they would look back into that pool. So that is also something to consider, that you don't have to go back and forth, with their 5, the county's 5, and then a separate process for choosing our alternates.
and I think we have 6 county applicants, correct?
That's correct.
And
So
then-
there are 6 applicants solely for the county. There were 18 for the city. So after they choose their initial 5, we'll get that 13. So it will be 19 individuals from whom you have to select.
And so basically, we need to decide how we're going to select folks for interviewing, right? I would think that we would interview all the county applicants since there's 6, and then decide how, are we wanting to interview all the city applicants that weren't selected, or watch the interviews and maybe watch the interviews and then see if there's some that we would also like to interview? Would that be one way of doing it?
And the city was supposed to make that decision already, but postponed for whatever reason?
Yes,
Okay.
they postponed. Apparently, there was some complications around the specifics of their selection process. So they were originally slated to do that on the 22nd of February, but now will be March 8th.
One process we've used with large applicant pools where we want to do a fair number of interviews is have each commission member bring forth several names and try to create a pool of, maybe out of 19, we would create a pool of a dozen or so to interview towards the goal of selecting 5. So that's, we've used that a couple times when it hasn't felt realistic to interview an entire applicant pool.
I would be fine with that. I think we should interview all 6 of the county applicants, and then whichever other ones I'd be fine with. And I think we have some real strong ones in the county applicants. I looked over those. We have some good ones there as well.
All right, and I'm sorry, I know this was just said, but I'm getting all the numbers jumbled. After we appoint the members from the, well, we have a certain number of the folks from the county, and then how many additional ones beyond that?
We get to appoint 5 and then up to 2 alternates.
Right. Or, well, 2 is a suggested number. It's not up to, it's really at your discretion for how many. So just to go back over those numbers, because I know I gave you quite a few. Okay, there are 6 applicants from the county. There were 18 applicants from the city. The city will choose their 5 from that list of 18 on March 8th, which will leave 13, plus the 6 county applicants for county review. So that's a total of 19. From that 19, 5 must be chosen for commission membership, and then alternates are suggested there. However, there is not a set number. 2 is a suggestion, but if you feel strongly about another number higher or lower, then that is.
So 5 appointments and then potentially alternates too, if we want to do alternates. Okay.
Will we be doing these interviews at our prior to our next commission meeting in order to get this all done in time? I think so.
Sounds like we have to.
I think so.
And doing them that day is maybe not an option unless we start early. Because we have a 1 o'clock meeting, right? Or no, actually, we don't. That's the meeting that got canceled. Early childhood doesn't have a meeting that either. So
No.
actually, we don't have any meetings before the briefing meeting. So we could try to handle it on that day.
Sounds good.
I'm open to ideas around the most, I don't think we want to interview every single applicant. That seems like a bigger number than, certainly more than we could probably take on in one day and process. But I'm a little, I mean, it's not like I'm against the idea of interviewing all the county applicants, but in a way, like not interviewing the city applicants, the folks from within the city. I mean, I know the city will have interviewed them or done some kind of review process, but that information won't be inside our heads. So I'm wondering how we give kind of fair consideration to those applicants too. Because we could theoretically appoint whoever we wish, right? I mean, it's not, I mean, if we just, I don't think this will happen, but theoretically, we could say, it just turns out that these folks from the city are just the best folks for this. I mean, it's not like we have to pick from more of the county pool than the city pool. These are all county, they all are residents of Buncombe County, right? So,
Yes, and the thing is, we can go watch the interviews, right? So we can clearly go ahead and go watch the interviews of everybody that applied through the city. It's just that the ones that applied through the county haven't been interviewed yet. So it seems as if they should get a chance at being interviewed as well.
yeah, but that would involve us watching all those interviews. So in terms of like reducing our amount of time, if that's the goal, it doesn't reduce that. Just think about it from our standpoint.
So my way of thinking, it's simplest to just think of it as an applicant pool of 19 people that we should narrow to the people we want to interview, and then select 5 from within that. It doesn't quite, to my way of thinking, it doesn't quite work to say the county applicants are immediately interviewed. I just think of it as an applicant pool of county residents who have applied for this, and they're going through different systems based on, my mic is off, I apologize. So I'd put that on the table, that we just look at the total list and figure out whatever method feels most comfortable to folks to narrow it. So
Do we know?
I
a little different.
I kind of lean in that direction too, personally, but I mean,
I'm kind of falling between the two. So my question is, on those applications, do we know which district they live in? So that we then could
I don't think so.
look across the districts.
It gives a zip code and
And
it
it
says,
gives
do you
us,
live in
yeah,
Asheville
it's
or
not the city versus the county. It broadens the scope to our commissioner districts. Because we've done that before in other interviews. We've looked at that breakdown of where folks live throughout the county.
Like Parker said, you can see the zip code. I
We-
didn't
we
see
can-
it broken
We
down
can
by
put that
district
in and
on there.
probably figure it out.
Mhm.
let me ask this, because I think there's not necessarily a right or wrong way to do this. We just need to make a decision. Who would prefer to interview all the residents who live outside the city, plus add a few more to the interview list? Let's say that's option A. And say option B would be kind of the scenario Jasmine described, where we all just kind of look at the total pool of applicants, and everybody comes to, we decide, everyone ranks their top 4 or 5 or whatever, and then those who, have the most overall interest, we focus on interviewing that set of applicants, and it's presumptively kind of a combination of inside and outside the city. So let's say that's option B. So who would lean towards option A?
I will, just because I think everybody should get a shot at an interview that's applying for this. So I'll lean toward option A.
Okay.
I
And
do
then-
too.
Okay. Then who would lean towards option B? I'd lean that way. Commissioner Whitesides, what do you think about this? Or is there an option C?
I'm purposely being quiet,
Okay,
and now I'm going to start.
go ahead.
You know, I hope that this whole process is not just window dressing. I don't like the way it's starting out. I've attended several of the meetings, one for Stumptown, where I lived for 24 years, and then another for the South Side area where I've lived for the rest of my life since I've, been here. But this is the most convoluted thing I've seen. And, I want to see us, this is something that's long overdue. But I don't want to see this become urban renewal and model cities 2+2. And by that, I mean, I remember in the 60s, and I complained about it then as a young man, how we were paying the people. I saw how they were manipulated, how we handled them, and nothing happened. We know what happened then. I don't want to see it happen this time. And I know you're new to the area, but I've been here and I'm listening to the people in the community too. And I'm hearing a lot. I'm not the only one that's not comfortable with where this whole process is. And when I listen to us talk about what we're going through to put people on there, and I'm seeing it, I just hope we are not setting up something to fail from the beginning. I want to see this be a success because it's needed in the area. But we've got to make sure we do it right. We've got to make sure we have the people on there who are going to do a good job of representing these communities and all, which, I think it's a good idea to have the people from the communities, true. I mean, we need them because they have been the ones who've been affected by it. But it just seems that we're making this so darn complicated. I mean, I don't know, maybe it's just me. I just hope we aren't setting up something to fail.
And do you have any thoughts about what might be the best way to make these appointment decisions?
Well, I think the best way to make the appointment decisions is to look at the pool and pick out who we think would be the best. We can look at the pool, the ones that they've interviewed for the city. But I would feel more comfortable looking at that, using that, but for us to bring them in and us to do our own interview process.
Okay. And
Because I don't want to see us as commissioners rubber stamping this whole process. You know, I want to see us participate in it.
And again, I want to make sure we got the numbers right. There'll be a total of 19 applicants remaining, right, from the city and outside the city
Yes,
for us to consider
that's correct. Mr.
selecting from
Chairman.
within.
The pool will be 19, which is the 6 county, and the remaining 13 for 19 individuals.
Okay. Any additional thoughts? You know, we could, if we've got 5 appointments, we definitely need to make potentially a couple of alternates as well. That's 7, pool of 19 applicants. So, you know, a little under half will end up being selected for at least one of those positions. I mean, if we were going to narrow the pool down some, you know, which we usually do if we have a big pool of applicants, I mean, what would be the range to narrow it down to, you know, 12 to 13 or something in that neighborhood? We're only reducing that by, you know, 5 or 6 or 7. The amount of time we spend discussing how to do that, we could probably just interview them and spend no less time. So, I mean, there would be a scenario where we simply interview all the applicants, or I'm just thinking out loud. I mean, the reason we usually narrow it down is because it's just usually not enough time to interview when we have very large numbers. But the difference is here in terms of how much time we save and how much time we figure out the process might not be
Guess
much of a
that's
difference.
option C.
That may be option C.
Yeah.
But if we're not going to do that, I mean, I would still lean towards the idea that we all pick the, you know, 4 or 5, like pick your 4 or 5 people you're most interested in interviewing. Maybe we go ahead and as a commission decide we're going to interview 12 to 13, and then the folks who are identified by, most often by the most commissioners, that would be the pool of applicants that's selected for
Ronnie,
interview.
why don't you do it this way? Let all of us look at all the lists. We come up with 15, with 5 each.
Mhm.
And then we compare notes and see, because some of us will probably pick the same people. And that might help us cut it down of who we think are the best for the pool.
And then how many would ultimately be interviewed, do you think, would you suggest?
I'd say no more than 10 to 12.
Okay.
Because if we're going to pick 5 and 2 alternates, yeah, 12 at the maximum.
Okay. Does anybody have any other thoughts? I think that's a great suggestion. All right. So review the entire list. Everybody, in essence, is going to get kind of 5 of your dots to put on people. You got to pick 5 different ones. You can't put all your dots on one person or 2 people, right? So you got to come up with a list of your top 5. And then, so in terms of timing on that, then we need to get that information to Mr. Joyner. Is that right? And when would we do the interviews? At the next meeting?
I thought you said since there's no interviews that day, we could schedule them earlier
could.
that day.
Yep.
So we could start noon, or we could start 1.
Yeah,
Y'all
it's
decide.
But okay, here's that, is it still a wrinkle? The city council's not going to make their final decisions until when?
The 8th.
The 8th.
So you would have your pool starting on the 9th.
Okay, Dave.
Okay, so on March 9th, we'll be notified who we can draw from.
13. You will have your 6, but you'll get your 13 on the 9th.
Okay. But does the timing work on this? So if we don't start till the 13th, then is there really time to set these interviews up?
The 9th.
We'll know on the 9th, I'm sorry.
We'd
That's
have to
Wednesday.
We'll have to have a day or 2, though, to look at, well, no, we can look at their application.
We don't know, but we don't.
We
we get all the application materials
Yes.
now?
Yes.
Have that now. We have the cities too? Thank you. I'll go find that.
So you do have all the information now. So you can do some pre-work before you get the final 13 that the city will have. Now, scheduling interviews does become a hard job for us to do, to get all those interviews and contact all those people in a short amount of time. So we can go ahead and, put out there to the whole group that we may potentially be interviewing you on the 15th. And so they can already be aware that that may come, but still, we still have the process of contacting those people and making sure that they have that time to interview. And that does give, if you don't do the work prior to that, and you start and then it becomes 2 to 3 days after that we get your selections, then it becomes harder to contact those people and get those people set up for interviews.
And what's the deadline for making the appointments?
Right now, the deadline is based on the 15th, which is the date that the county is slated to do that. However, if more time is needed or requested, we can definitely do that. There's not an outside number or date by which these need to be chosen. It really depends on our selection process.
So originally, the city had said in March, but then they pushed back their timeline. So I think we should get some flexibility there in order to make our appointments as well. So but like Rachel said, there is no drop dead date at this particular time that they want us to. I just know they want to get this process completed as soon as possible.
That's correct. That's my understanding as well. And so unfortunately, due to that pushback with their selection process, it's made our time frame shorter. And so given that, and that point has been raised with the city, we definitely do have the room, as Mr. Joyner said, to request an extension on time.
So March is one of those months where there's there's actually 5 Tuesdays in the month, right? So I'm concerned. I'd like to see this moving ahead, but it does feel like a very tight window to wait until we learn what the city council's decisions are. It's like we would all need to then, once we know who's not in consideration, within 24 to 48 hours, we would need to communicate with Mr. Joyner, who we would like to interview so that there's still time for him to, and others to notify the applicants to be participating in the interviews just a few days later. But I guess in a way this is a question to the staff. Do you feel like that is realistic? If we could get you our list of 5 applicants each within 48 hours, so by the end of, let's at the end of the day, Thursday, city council makes a decision Tuesday, we'd have Wednesday, Thursday. If we could get you our names by Thursday, does that work? Because I know, we probably need at least a day and a half to review what's there and then make our recommendations.
I think Lamar's, Mr. Joyner, I think his suggestion actually made sense. If he could tell the whole pool that you're a possibility, and then he can come back on that Thursday or Friday and confirm the ones that will be coming forward.
So they'll be
on Tuesday.
prepared.
They'll be prepared, yes.
So
and
if
he
we
could
get
hold that time.
so if we then narrow it down by Thursday, he could notify the ones who are then selected, and so that can work. Okay, all right. Well, that sounds like that's viable then, and so we can keep it all moving ahead. So we're not taking 3 more weeks to make a decision.
Just a quick, question. So each one of you will send 5 individuals, and is it up to me to decide to do the ranking? And
Yes, but it's just a math. It's just a math process.
and I
right?
don't
So
mind, but so it's
There's-
just the top.
You're looking for
the top
Well,
seven?
I think
or-
we said the top 10
10
to
to
12.
12.
So let's make a clear decision on that so that Mr. Joyner will know how many to notify. Do we want it to be 10, 11, or 12? Okay, all right, so you'll just, it's basically just like votes. The people, the 12 who get the most votes will be interviewed. Okay. All right, thank you for helping us think this through. And Mr. Joyner, thanks to you and in advance for helping to coordinate the interviews. And if everyone could just maybe make a note on your calendar or however you do it, that on Wednesday, you need to be sure to check your email from Lamar, because on Wednesday or by the end of the day, Thursday, you need to weigh in on who you want your 5 interviewees to be. Great. All right, the last item on our agenda for today is the Arpa Economic Development Appropriation. And Tim Levis here on this item.
Good afternoon. Good afternoon, Commissioners. Tonight, we wanted to preview an item for the upcoming board meeting, but wanted to get you up to speed on what that is. Got a few slides to present to you. This does relate to the Local Fiscal Recovery Fund, so the ARPA funding. And it relates to a prior allocation that you'd already kind of voted on, but we've got some changes we wanted to share with you today, and we'll need ultimately your approval at the upcoming board meeting for those. So as background, you approved $1.25 million for the Mountain Community Capital Fund in November 2021. That's that loan guarantee program for small businesses, very equity focused. The funding was allocated through the Local Fiscal Recovery Fund, so that's ARPA funding. Original application submitted by Mountain BizWorks on behalf of the Mountain Community Capital Fund. And as a reminder, the Mountain Community Capital Fund, or the MCCF, it's a joint committee between the city, the county, and community development financial institutions. So those are CDFIs, like Mountain BizWorks, Self-Help, and others. So that's our background. But there's a slight issue, nothing too problematic, but definitely want to get you up to speed on it. So staff conducted additional analysis of the Treasury guidance and identified a potential issue. And because of that, we're recommending a program change. The original program utilized funds for the loan guarantee program. However, a guarantee is only utilized or expended if the loan defaults. And so based on the letter of the Treasury guidance, putting money into a guarantee doesn't meet Treasury guidance because you may not expend it or utilize it by the end date. The end date in this case is December 31, 2026. And so in reality, it's a good thing for a loan not to default and not to use a guarantee. That's what we would expect to see. But from the perspective of Treasury, you're not actually spending the funds, so that's not in compliance. So with that said, in order to change this allocation programmatically, we believe it needs another public hearing. Because it's an economic development appropriation, it needs a public hearing period, regardless of funding source. You conducted a public hearing last time, and so we would recommend that this come before the board at our next meeting on March 15th. Big bullet at the bottom, no additional funds requested. This is for the exact same amount of money, slight difference in the program structure, but no additional funds requested. So summary of the program and how it will be proposed. So it's still a small business lending program, still seeking to create jobs by lending to small businesses that lack sufficient credit or collateral to access the needed capital to retain and create jobs. So these are businesses that are creating jobs that basically don't have enough collateral to get traditional lending. The population, same demographics we're looking at, small businesses, less than 25 employees, founded by low-income entrepreneurs. So still focusing on equity small business development. Funding remains at $1.15 million, with $100K used for additional administrative costs. Results are the same, 90 businesses expected to receive loans, creating or retaining 320 jobs. Additional note, in our work with the CDFIs, we were able to maintain the creation of the loan guarantee program. And so, in some ways, by transitioning into a direct loan program, it freed the CDFIs up to fund the loan guarantee. And this is a really important point, and I wanted to just talk about it a little bit. The reason the loan guarantee is important is because it gives confidence to investors that are giving their money, donating their money to CDFIs, that these loans have a backstop. It's not about just taking on more risk. It's about creating additional confidence in the overall system by having that loan guarantee. That's important. I bring that up just so you have context for it. We're not asking you to fund a loan guarantee program because we can't. We're asking you to fund a direct loan program, which we know is clearly eligible under Treasury guidance.
But
Sure.
when you say the investors, but we are the investor, right? So are you saying it gives us confidence, or are you talking about some other investor?
We're the primary investor in this particular item, but someone like Mountain BizWorks or Self-Help, the majority of their funding doesn't come from Buncombe County. It's going to come from traditional lenders, credit unions, things of that nature. And so they need to be able to communicate to those investors, hey, we have a way of, backstopping some of these loans that are more risky because of the lack of collateral. Does that answer your question?
Yeah, but in this loan pool fund, are some of those other investors investing into this loan pool fund, or is this in essence Buncombe County?
They do through their investment in Mountain BizWorks or Self-Help. Those dollars that those organizations have for lending, that's where that exists.
It's a bigger pool of funding. We're just adding our 1.25 million to that larger pool.
And I believe Mountain BizWorks does the direct loans. In the current Mountain Capital Fund, we are the backstop, so the direct loan is coming from another source, and we are that backstop to give the collateral, so to speak, for the direct loans to be lent.
So just so I understand, basically, we're going to take the money that we were going to do as the kind of the collateral, the other loan. We're going to do the direct loans, but there will be still that other put in for what we had originally intended as well.
That's correct.
So that was still going to help. So basically, we're still helping the businesses that we wanted to help
Absolutely.
for the long term.
Still helping the same businesses, but also importantly, keeping the lending ecosystem together by having that backstop in place.
Okay, great.
All right. So then a summary of key changes. So this chart just meant to show you some of the key components of the program, what was the original proposal, and then what is the new proposal. I've bolded the items on the right, which have changed, just so you can quickly understand the differences. So the program manager, originally Self-Help, in this case, it now becomes Mountain BizWorks. The funding, same funding amount, not bolded. The use of funding by Buncombe County, the change is to go to a direct loan model. So our funds, again, direct loans, which is compliant with Treasury guidance. Outcomes are the same. Loan guarantee amount remains the same, and the loan guarantee source changes. So whereas we were initially providing the loan guarantee, this now becomes Mountain BizWorks. So that's kind of the key changes to the program. Wanted to summarize it because I know it's a lot of moving pieces. Definitely available for more questions, but in terms of next steps, notice of public hearing, we would notice that today or tomorrow, and then we would host a public hearing on March 15th, at which time I'll have Mountain BizWorks available with me as well to answer any of your detailed questions. But before we close, what questions do you have?
And if, going back to this loan guarantee question, if somebody defaults on one of the county's loans, though, or maybe even taking a step back from that, the county is never paid back for this. We're investing this into this. There'll be the initial estimated, 90 businesses would get loans. As they're repaid, they'll just make new loans to other small businesses in the area. Like, it never gets paid back to the county.
Correct.
And therefore, in terms of the loan guarantee aspect on this, it's sort of irrelevant from our perspective, because this is a permanent investment into this fund that will just recycle with Mountain BizWorks.
That is correct. So no revolving loan for the county. We won't see dollars coming in. However, the Mountain Community Capital Fund, that loan guarantee amount, that will continue to revolve over time and continue to provide that collateral, that confidence, which will stabilize the system. So Commissioner Whitesides is a banker, so I see him nodding, so I think I'm doing okay today.
All right, thanks for the update, Tim.
Thank you.
All right, Commissioners, I think we have completed all the items on our agenda. So let's adjourn this meeting and we'll reconvene at 5 o'clock for the regular meeting. You got a minute? Jasmine, yeah.